We are bringing you an opportunity that no other news outlet out there is giving you. We have a libertarian. Her name is Angela in California. Matt, he is a Republican in Texas. David is a Democrat in California, and Joe is a Green Party member in Idaho. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please make sure you do that now. We're the only ones giving you this type of visibility into topics that our members have had the opportunity to research. So there's no gotcha moments, and you're going to hear from them right now. So topic 2, this is what they were texted this morning, and they are going to give you their opinions right now. Topic 2, most Americans agree the United States needs a viable third party. Many articles have been written about it. Many Americans have had the opportunity to voice their opinion that they'd like a third party. Why is there such a big disconnect between the two parties that we have right now? Why doesn't a viable third party get the opportunity in the mainstream media to represent themselves? Matt.
It's because we have this massive generation called the millennials that they, for the most part, are not far left and they're not far right. Much like myself, as what I would consider a moderate conservative, did not vote for Trump, would never vote for Mitch McConnell, but would never vote for Bernie Sanders and would never vote for AOC. There's this whole group of people that want to see policies from both sides. We've never had the ability to have that in most of people that are alive today's political climate. We need that. We have to have that. And until we can get that, we're going to continue to see this need. But we have other generations that lean one way or the other that are going to continue to run the media, that are going to continue to be, a majority, and they're going to be the ones voting these two parties in until we can see a fundamental shift.
We have a systemic problem in this country that created the duopoly and will perpetuate it until we change the systems. This isn't an issue of not having the right ideas. This is an issue of we have a system under Duverger's principle, Duverger's law, like we know that we're going to end up with a two-party dominance in this system, right? We need to change things, right? Which is why most of the effective reforms, both the Tea Party and the left and the Democratic Party, they're coming from inside the parties now. Because after, seeing what happened, back in 2000, like with Green Party runs, or even like in 2016, where third parties garnered a much higher percentage of the vote than in 2020, people realize fundamentally that at the end of the day, when you're voting for larger offices, you have to vote for one of these two parties, which is why we need reforms such as, and this is for me, the most important reform we need to get nationwide in every single election we can get it in, is ranked choice voting. That is going to eliminate the game theory that every voter goes through of, is this person actually electable? Can this person actually win? And once you can eliminate that and allow people to then vote where their ideals and their passion lies and not throw their vote away, that is going to be the massive, breakthrough that we need to go ahead and really energize some of these third parties that can then start to win elections because they'll get more people to vote for them, because the whole game theory of, is this person electable, will have been shattered.
Joe, he brings up a great point about the duality of the parties that we have right now. You're a Green Party person. And from the Green Party, we got the Green New Deal that was picked up and ran with by Democrats, kind of just steamrolling over your party. The Libertarians have contributed a lot, and Democrats have stolen ideas from them as well. Why aren't we seeing more visibility of these third parties?
Part of the reason why we're having problems with visibility among the third parties is because of the fairness doctrine. Back when we were dealing with Ronald Reagan and when he allowed the monopolization of media markets, the media marketeers went and said, you know what? It's best if we just run two parties. If we stop distracting people with the third parties, we're able to control the venue, we're able to control the message, we're able to talk about what's going on with and control things in Congress, control things with the president. So right now, one of the things we have a problem with is the big suit that's going on with President Trump's campaign. All the Republican states have signed off on it, almost. The Texas suit against the 4 states. That tells me there's too much power in the central office of the president. So we need to dial that back. We need to roll it back, disempower the role of the president, disempower the role of Congress, decentralize the power structures in America so that this polarization isn't as severe as it is right now.
Angela.
Why would the deep state want to risk being voted out of power? There are a lot of laws and rules and regulations and media agreements set up to keep third parties out of the mainstream dialogue. And I understand why. Ballot access laws, Commission on Presidential Debates are two of the biggest things that keep us as third parties from gaining the same access to the media. But the media has no incentive to get us there because their advertisers, their supporters are beholden unto government. It's just a big swamp. It's too bad that Donald Trump didn't actually drain the swamp and became part of it.
This is no different than what we saw in France just a few years ago. 10 years ago, if you would have asked someone in France, will we ever have a third political party? They would have said absolutely not. Until Emmanuel Macron came along, created a third party, and ended up winning. And at the end of the day, it's really important to note that it's because of a generational shift. They were tired of what was happening in France. They were tired of the political parties and what they stood for. And then someone came in a third party and someone won. They considered themselves extreme on both sides, and they considered themselves extremely good to the people of France at that given time. And they won, and he won, and he's a popular leader within that country still today after a few years. So it's no different than what we'll hit in a few years, I believe, with this political shift.
The difficult part is Macron was able to win France because they have runoffs, because they require the president to win a majority of the votes in the entire country. We don't have that. We have the Electoral College, okay? The Electoral College will ruin any attempt to do that. And, as with, Ross Perot, let's say we have a third party run in 1992 by Ross Perot, you end up with a president like Bill Clinton, who got only 43% of the popular vote, which is abysmal. All right. And the idea that we have to reform these systems, we have to eliminate the Electoral College if we ever want to have more than, two parties viable in this country for that office. It's going to be across the board. We just need to fix the systems to start getting better outcomes.
Honestly, the Electoral College is a moot point. We have too much power in Congress. We have too much power in Washington, D.C. As long as that power continues to decide how the states are run, blanket policies that go across the entire United States without regard to regional concerns or even municipal concerns in a lot of places, the situation is going to continue to deteriorate. Literally, we just need to disempower Washington, D.C.
Angela, I want to bring in one major point, though. Even from the Democrats' perspective, Joe Biden's coming into office, and you're seeing him sit down and have his cabinet potentially made up of Republicans and Democrats of the old guard. We're talking about people that have been within government for a very long time. Right now, do we have a system that's two separate parties? Are they just two sides of the same coin?
Well, we've seen bipartisan support for wars and corporate bailouts for the last, 50 years at least, and a failure for either party to meet the requests of their constituents. It sounds like they're both pretty on board with the same agenda. But I would say that don't give up hope, because in 1840, if you'd been sitting in a room with a bunch of people and you'd looked around and you'd asked, will we ever get rid of slavery in this country? You would have been laughed out of the room. 25 years later, slavery was abolished. Radical change can happen in the country, and it can happen very rapidly.
To push back on that, is radical change good, or is that something that the media is going to pick up on and really tear apart? Define radical change.
Oh, radical change could be anything. It could be good, it could be bad. We saw 50 million people die in China's Great Leap Forward. But I would say that, the United States Revolution was a radical change for the better. So it really is, the revolution, if it ever happens, is made up of the people who have the ideology to make it happen.
David, how could a third party person get your vote as a Democrat?
They would have to be able to win. We have to have a system where people can win. And look, as a Democrat, I want there to be ranked choice voting. I want to empower a broader range of ideas. And that is exactly how you do it. What we need is a system where I'm not going to have to make any sort of analysis of, gosh, do I need to look at the polls and see whether you're actually polling in somewhere where I'm not going to be throwing my vote away by voting for you? Now, California has tried to help with that because we have jungle primary where the top two that come out of it will then run against each other. And so one of them has to get a majority of the votes. So that helps at least. But ranked choice voting would be the best way to try and empower this. And it would also allow me to then vote even in the Democratic primary. How many times do people hear like, well, Bernie just can't win the general? You know, you have a lot of people who are very energized about him, or they're energized about whoever their candidate is. And then somebody comes back and says, well, that person can't actually win, right? If we can just eliminate those mental barriers that so many Americans have, because that is the system, you know, that we currently exist in, that they've learned politics in, if we can eliminate that barrier, that is when we're going to allow people to really vote their conscience, to vote for ideas that are wildly popular, but that the political system, Democrats and Republicans and everybody who's established in the system, are obstructing, right?
We're gonna have to move on to Joe. Joe, go ahead and respond.
Yeah, just to build on your question, Nick, David, what would it take for a third party candidate in a local race, say Congress, state legislature, in your case, state assembly? What would it take for a third party to get your vote for one of those races?
If there was a Green Party candidate, for example, that was running against a Democrat for a state or a local race, I would absolutely vote for them. And in California, because if they're on the final ballot where it's just one of those two people, then yeah, like all they have to do is basically be more aligned with my views than whoever they're running against.
So that being said, I mean, we're talking about, 80 million votes potentially for Joe Biden, 75 to 77 million votes for Donald Trump, and just a few million votes for Joe Jorgensen, our next most, most abundant candidate. So, I think a lot of people out there didn't even know that she existed. Can you tell me why they didn't know?
Well, part of it is because we have a media that concentrates solely, starting with the primaries, on two parties. We have the Republican and we have the Democrats. And until a third party candidate can get the media coverage, can get the backing and the financing, sometimes, not always the case, then they never will have a chance. But also, it goes back to this generational thing. You're talking to a conservative and a Democrat here that agree with each other, and that if I see a third party on the ballot and I agree with everything that they have to say, I will vote for them over a Republican. And I will do that with no hesitation. But until that's the case, and they have to have the winnability. If they're not going, if Joe Jorgensen and I agreed on every single thing in the last election, and there was no way I was going to vote for Donald Trump, I would have still voted for Joe Biden because Joe Jorgensen did not have a chance of winning the election. So until that fundamentally shifts, and that starts way before the general election, that starts now for 2024 to make sure that these parties can get someone in. And it's going to take time. It's not going to happen in 2024, but I have every faith that, to Angela's point of a revolution, it could happen in 2028 and happen easily if they get the right people on board.
You're right. We only have 7 minutes left. So would you guys agree all together that we do need a third party? Is that a yes that the audience could hear?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
We need a system that
Yes.
allows, we have parties. We have these other parties that are on the call right now, are with us right here. We need a better system.
Awesome. Awesome.